Here is an unusual Nunchaku variation, and definitely not something you see every day. It looks as if one of the two sticks was divided in two and then strung together. So it's a three-piece Nunchaku, but with one standard stick. You've already seen me in a previous video playing with a set of Asymmetrical Setsu Kon or Setsu Chaku, and that was this set here. As I've said before, Nunchaku represent an entire weapons family. Big, little, different cross-sections. 2-stick, variation on the 2-stick. 3-stick, variation on the 3-stick. 4-stick, and yes, variation on the 4-stick. I will get a hold of some Setsu Kon 4-stick Nunchaku to show you, but that's gonna have to wait. Back to these. First question that pops into my head is why? Like, why bother? So I would imagine you're generally going to hold it by the longer of the two sticks, right? And swing with the two minis. With the symmetrical version, I think the origin story is pretty obvious. People wanted an even more easily carried and concealed version of this weapon, the Nunchaku. That was already the main selling point for this civilian EDC item. And somebody said, well, what if we make it even more collapsible? And here's the set that I showed previously, and as discussed in that video, you could stuff these into your sleeve. But you do not get extra concealability, collapsibility with these. And two of the sticks collapse more, but one doesn't. So there has to be something else going on, or at least, I think theoretically. I mean, maybe somebody came up with this design just for the fun of it. And of course, this is not the only 3-section fighting flail from the Far East. In fact, there's a much more famous example being wielded here by the man on the right. Now, it is possible that somebody took inspiration from this Chinese weapon, which also made its way to Okinawa and then Japan. But with martial arts history, things are always very cloudy. We really have no idea. Hey, how about a young Jackie Chan holding a 3-section staff? There are all kinds of overlapping possibilities. Maybe someone was just thinking about creating a more portable version of Nunchaku. Or somebody just said, I just want to shrink down a 3-section staff, that was done in China, and then that item made it to Okinawa. And it's even said that the 4-piece wooden flail was invented by a Chinese emperor. And then there are other multi-section flails like the chain whip. Here's a guy twirling 2 of those. So the bottom line is we'll never know. By the way, it seems the Western world had a multi-sectioned flail whip as well, seen here on page 33 of my book. Amazing how similar in design really that is. See the striking ball on the end there too. This is not just a whip, it's a flexible impact weapon. So yes, the West had their own flexible impact weapons, including for civilian use. Short, long, all kinds of things. Including ones like this, but not quite like this. Not this 1 stick and then 2 shorter sticks combination. So how does it feel to handle this compared to a regular set of chucks? A little bit weird. I mean, obviously you can use it as a standard pair. It can even switch hands. That's not its ideal use. Something that's really nice about regular chucks is their unpredictability. I mean, you can't even be sure which hand is going to lash out at you. And stop and think about how many other weapons you can say that about. It's a pretty short list. So you kind of lose that with these, I would say. Even though technically you can do those moves. Grappling applications, definitely not as handy. No pun intended. Again, technically could be done, but no, it doesn't feel right. And the 2-handed swings definitely don't feel right, which, again, as a reminder, they feel fantastic with regular Nunchaku. Maybe this design is all about hitting then. So let's do some hitting. Got a big old piece of driftwood. And this is where I thought I would discover the purpose behind the design. My hypothesis all along with these was that it was about diffusing the impact in some way as you strike with the 2 small sticks so that you really don't have to worry about bounce back at all. As before in this video series, this is an old pair that I borrowed, so I'm not going to beat the stuffing out of it. But so far, I'm at, yeah, it's possible. A lot of dead wood exposed up here on, I think, what was a former floodplain, because there's a river below me. That's why I called it driftwood, even though I'm in North Texas. So, try the end there. It's like harder than it seems, and more rigid, but it did have some yield, as you could see. Kind of a trampoline effect. I'm not sure if the bounce back there is more because of the wood, because of that rebound. In fact, I think that's the case. I'm going to look for something else. Found a little projection here to go after. Give it a try. That little branch didn't seem like much, but it was actually quite stout. So here, let me go with the full tonfa against it. Gonna unleash from behind the forearm for full power. Yeah, still standing. 3 solid whacks with the tonfa. So that was probably a better target, and swinging against it worked the way I thought it would. I know the quality here, visual quality is not good. I'm zooming in on a freeze frame, but notice I'm striking that piece of wood that was on the ground, hitting it with the end piece, the end of the 2 smaller pieces, like you would presumably want to do with this weapon, and here's what happens after. The striking piece does want to bounce back. You can see that there, right? The V. But the piece behind it, which is kind of the middle piece, it doesn't want to naturally so much, so it's going to have to get dragged back along this returning trajectory. You have the 2 different connections, so almost a chain effect for the returning energy to kind of get dissipated. Because I was being careful with this pair, I have to just stick to possible for my hypothesis. One way I won't mess these up is by hitting myself, so let's give that a shot. So a human body is what these things are designed to strike, not a coconut, not a tree, not, pine board. I think we can demonstrate against my leg more effectively the premise here. So I'm striking with just the 3rd piece. And you can see we're not getting much bounce back at all, and that's against the thigh, which is a better target for this experiment. My gut that I was using before has got some extra padding. Welcome to middle age. But my thigh is still pretty much muscle, so a much more realistic target in terms of you would think that would send the missile, so to speak, back at you. And yeah, that could be what this is about. You have just half of a regular stick wanting to come back. That's the only part making contact. So maybe that's what this is about, but obviously you're giving up some offense in that way as well, because you're hitting with far less mass. That plus the fact that, as I've shown in other videos, bounce back is nowhere near the concern a lot of people think it is, explains why this design was never a huge player. It was definitely a thing, but it was clearly just a variation. But an interesting one. So does it hit with less power? I think scientifically we'd have to say it does. Realistically, does it hit with enough? I would also say yes, and you could hear the sound when I was hitting myself in the abdomen and the leg. That wasn't swinging very fast at all. Reminder, when it comes to motion, the selling point of Nunchaku is acceleration, which they excel at. I've done experiments in other videos showing that. I'd even go so far as to say they're unmatched when it comes to that one factor. And all that, as it relates to this particular weapon here, is just to say that I think you can get this one going. You can whip it more than fast enough to make up for the fact that you're striking with less wood. And I can totally understand somebody looking at this picture and saying, that half stick, that's just not enough. I mean, it's going to hurt, but no, that would not be fight effective. But that reminds me of a video I made a long time ago when the channel was new. Geez, 5 years ago. I got this sap in the mail, was real excited about it, antique, has a unique configuration, kind of important for my studies. And then I got it out of the box and it was feather light. So I was really disappointed. I thought, well, one, it's a fake, and then no, it definitely looks old. So somebody just didn't put a load in here for some reason. They just wanted to look like they're armed or who knows what. But priding myself on not being an armchair martial arts or weapons researcher, writer, YouTuber, I smacked myself with it upside the head. And I was flat out shocked by the effect. I mean, I pretty much actually saw stars. So it turns out there was a load in there, but a tiny one, like a couple of ounces, surrounded by what feels like just cotton or rope fiber, not even sand. But this thing overall was really light, so it can move really fast, and it has this little rope hinge, very much like a nunchaku in fact. Just like that weapon, with this one you get that 0 to 100 effect that I've talked about and shown. It just turns on a dime. It describes that arc so quickly once you whip it towards the target that you get tremendous acceleration, and that's how a load that tiny, even cushioned by, again, what feels like cotton and then a skin of leather, could make me see stars. Reminds me of something I have in my book, an old street weapon, just a metal nut like this. Again, how big is that? Not very big, tied on a string, hidden in a sleeve. When trouble starts, you shake it loose from your sleeve and just swing and strike to the head, of course. Again, speed and acceleration counting for more than mass. And just to really continue this deep dive geek out, I have this video showing Mickey Mouse from a very old comic strip using pretty much that exact type of contraption. Notice it's not a nut, it's a little sphere of metal, but again, a tiny one on the end of a long string. Obviously, it's not a real incident, but it shows that a writer knew about that kind of a thing back in the day. And this is a really old cartoon, I think it was like from the 40s. And all of that is just to support the assertion that this small striking piece here could be enough. Now, what I think would be interesting is two pieces of wood with the third end piece being metal, or just metal shod. That could be devastating. Something like that probably got built at least at one point, because in the modern era, after these became a very popular street weapon thanks to Bruce Lee, people invented all kinds of ingenious and nasty versions using, lead pipes for sections, things like that. But back to the historical design, all wood, I think this doesn't give you the increased conceal and carry ability of the symmetrical 3-section Sansetsu Kon. It also probably loses some power. It definitely loses some grappling ability and ambidextrous use, which means less unpredictability. So not a superior design in my mind. I would need a nice new pair that I can totally bash to really test out the hypothesis. I mean, maybe it is that once you get good with this, you can swing with reckless abandon, without even the moderate self-inflicted love taps that give some people so much consternation about this weapon. But that is as far as the investigation goes for this video. Thanks for watching.